Good afternoon and welcome to our TV show featuring documentaries revealing the realities behind myths using research and scholarship. I'm your host, Ergün Kırlıkovalı, and I will be with you every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You're welcome to send me your feedback at mythsandrealities.com. Today marks a milestone. Together, we left 52 episodes behind. That's one whole year of meticulous research work. Now that our databank is taking shape, the question begs to be asked: how can we make the best use of it? How can we use that information to respond to misrepresentations with facts and scholarly references? How can we help create an atmosphere of a civilized dialogue and present responsible opposing views? Is building a fair memory based on shared pain achievable? I'm quite optimistic on all those issues. Otherwise, why would I do this arduous work week after week? No one is paying me for putting it together or put a gun to my head to do it. I volunteer to share my knowledge and wisdom with you because I believe telling the other side of the story truthfully and compassionately will eventually lead to fairness, peace, and closure. Today, I will propose the truth seekers a practical way to use that massive information. But first, a few words about how each episode is created. First, I decide on what topic to explore based on a long list of issues ignored, dismissed, or falsified by the promoters of the alleged Armenian Genocide. I call that list the 15 T's of the Turkish Armenian conflict. Then I line up all the pertinent scholarly books, white papers, news, editorials, and documents to provide easily accessible references. Every statement uttered in this program is supported by a scholarly and verifiable reference. That challenge is, of course, how to do all that without boring the viewers. It would help greatly if I could access all the exciting color photos, maps, and documents concerning important events in history. Unfortunately, that is not always possible. Very few photographs exist from those days, since the technology of photography was in its infancy 100 years ago. Also, unlike today, the practice of taking photographs of a violent conflict by attackers, victims, or third parties was not always possible or even desirable in those days. Then, of course, there are the secrecy and censorship issues that prevent public access to archives even today. For example, access to Armenian archives, religious or lay, is limited to those few ardent supporters of the genocide claim. In view of all these considerations, I feel lucky to have been able to find the photos and documents that I shared with you. So please don't judge me harshly on those faint black and white photos, fading documents, and boring old maps. That's all I could find. I work with what is available. And about that endless parade of numbers, names, and dates, I'm afraid you will have to bear with me on that, as it is the nature of history scholarship. Although I'm a chemist by profession, I find history a relaxing endeavor. I'm a student of history. This month would mark my 44th year of reading on these issues. Why do I do this? Because I'm curious. I question, I research, I share. I specialize on the history of 19th and 20th century Ottoman Empire and Turkish Republic that followed it. Over the years, I have built up a personal library of about 1,000 books, and most of them I read carefully. I also utilize articles, editorials, and white papers. When one reads for many years on a given topic, a clearer picture eventually emerges. You begin to separate the grain from the chaff and the fact from the fiction. Some call this specialization. I prefer to call it wisdom. Although I take extreme care not to make mistakes, no one is immune from mistakes. So, if I have made a few along the way, I ask for your forgiveness. If you point out those to me, I will do my best to correct them at once and avoid them in future. As the saying goes, to err is human, to forgive divine. What is my goal? Simply put, my goal is to shine a light on the myths, to reveal the realities behind them, to represent the other side of the story, to set the record straight. And there sure are many myths, tall tales, and urban legends regarding the Turkish-Armenian conflict. I'm hoping to provide a delectable buffet of information to you, where truth seekers can pick and choose whatever they wish to consume. Have I achieved my goal? I would say only partially. What I have tackled in the last 52 episodes is only the tip of the iceberg. When I reach 100th, 150th, even 250th episodes, then I will consider my goal achieved. Patience, determination, and hard work are needed going forward. That said, I will propose a simple system for using effectively the information in the 52 episodes. Since the long discredited political claim of Armenian genocide ignores the 15 T's of the Turkish-Armenian conflict, why not start with them? I suggest selecting a T and then see which episodes explain that T best. For example, T1, TUMULT, Armenians taking up arms against their own government from 1862 to 1922. See episodes 24 and 25. T2, terrorism, all four phases of Armenian terrorism. First, 1862 to 1922, from the Zeytun Rebellion to the burning of Izmir, Smyrna, by Armenian volunteers in Greek armies. Second, the Nemesis terror group, 1922-1927, established to assassinate Ottoman leaders. Third, and lasted until 1927. Third is Yannikian, Asala, JCAG, and others, 1973 to 1986, targeting Turkish diplomats and their families. Fourth, mass harassment from 1987 to today, featuring academic terrorism, political resolutions, media lynches, violent demonstrations, and bullying. See episodes 1, 10, 33, and 35. T3, treason. Armenians joining the invading enemy armies as early as 1914 and lasting until 1922. Armenian volunteers traitorously carried uniforms of the invaders, Russia, France, Britain, and Greece, and raped and killed Turkish villagers and pillaged Turkish towns. These are all historical facts. No remorse was shown by Armenians for this supreme treason. See episodes 50, 51, and 52. T4, territorial demands. From 1828 onwards, some Ottoman Armenians made territorial demands in regions where Armenians were a minority, attempting to establish a mythical Greater Armenia. If Armenians succeeded, it would have been the first apartheid of the 20th century. There, a tiny Christian minority would be ruling over a massive Muslim majority. See episodes 17, 19, and 50. T5, Turkish suffering. More than 3 million Muslims, mostly Turks, died during the First World War. 1.1 million of them died in eastern Anatolia alone, and 518,000 of those met their tragic ends at the hands of torturous Armenian revolutionaries. Compare that to Armenian casualties of 54,000 as documented by the Turkish Historical Society based on police reports of the time. This number is magnified to more than 200,000 on March 19, 1919, on a Paris Peace Conference subcommittee report on responsibilities of the war. Then it was raised to 600,000 the same year, according to a poster hanging in a California high school history teacher's classroom. Then it was raised to 800,000 in a New York Times 1915 article, and 1.5 million now, a New York Times article by John Kiffner. Do the dead multiply? Hardly. But Armenian dead apparently do. And what about the Turkish suffering? It dwindled from 518,000 dead to 0 dead due to Islamophobia and Orientalism of the Armenian writers and their supporters in the West. See episodes 39 through 42. T6, TERRORISM, Temporary Resettlement Order of May 31st, 1915. It's documented as such. It's not to be equated to the misrepresentations of genocide. See episode 5, 9, and 10. T7, Turkophobia. The US ambassador to Istanbul, Henry Morgenthau, was an anti-Turkish, anti-Islam, and racist schemer. The Armenian insurgents would feed fabricated, slanderous stories demonizing Turks to the ambassador. He would then disseminate these to US President, US State Department, the New York Times, the British Propaganda Bureau, for Toynbee to write the fallacious book, the Blue Book, Johannes Lepsius, and other propagandists. The New York Times published 145 articles in 1915 alone and gave zero chance to Turks to rebut any of those wild and absurd claims. See episodes 9 through 15. T8, Tell All. Bogos Nubar Pasha letters of 1918 and 1919, Kachaznouni's manifesto of 1923, Papazian's book of 1934, and the Haushamatian of 1990 by ARF. Armenians were not innocent bystanders in this conflict. As the chairman of the Armenian National Delegation to Paris Peace Conference of 1919, Bogos Nubar confessed that the Ottoman Armenians were, quote, de facto belligerents, unquote. Thus, the fact that most Armenians betrayed their own country, the Ottoman Empire, by joining the invading enemy armies during a war of survival for the Ottoman Empire is revealed once and for all. Even bigger confession came in 1923 from the first Prime Minister of Armenia, Hovhannes Kachaznouni, during the Armenian Revolutionary Federation Party convention held in Bucharest. He said, and I quote, "We had created a dense atmosphere of illusion in our minds. We had lost our sense of reality and were carried away with our dreams. We overestimated the ability of the Armenian people, its political and military power, and the importance of the services of our people rendered to the Russians," unquote. In the preface of the 1934 book, Patriotism Perverted, the writer Gabriel Papazian reveals the monstrous nature of the murderous Armenian Revolutionary Federation as follows, and I quote, "An understanding of the background, past activities and purposes, and the methods of ARF may be important if we are going to try and rid the Armenian American community life of the predatory inclinations of the society. Its belief in the use of violence rather than persuasion to overcome opposition is alien to our American ideals and Christian principles," unquote. The Haushamatian is a massive confession by the ARF itself, documenting on one hand how they fought, quote, "epic battles," unquote, with the Turks, while on the other feeding the world with poor, starving, loyal Armenians without armies or weapons stories. See episodes 50, 51, and 52. T9, Transgressions. The Republic of Armenia was established in May 1918 and came under Soviet rule in December 1920. In those 30 months that it lived, the Armenian Republic provoked wars with all of our neighbors. In total, 30 wars in 30 months. That is how aggressive the Armenians were. This historical evidence points to the delusional self-importance, self-righteousness, and the feeling of superiority over all the nations surrounding Armenia. The same Armenian psychology was at work among most of the disloyal segment of the Ottoman Armenians. See episodes 6, 7, 19, and 46. T10. Tribunals. 1916 Ottoman courts-martial tried its own officers for mistreating Armenian refugees, or TERRITORIALs, and found some of them guilty. This proved that there was no intent to destroy. I covered the 1920 Ottoman courts-martial, or Istanbul kangaroo courts, in episode 5, which was convened by pressure from victorious allied states, which insisted on retributions for the Armenian massacres. The Sultan's people in occupied Istanbul hoped that by foisting blame on a few members of the Committee on Union and Progress, they might exculpate the rest of the Sultan's empire and receive more lenient treatment at the Paris Peace Conference. The court-martial found several defendants guilty of subverting constitutionalism by force and found them responsible for massacres. Armenian writers have praised the verdict as proof of genocide, but the conclusions are problematic given both the procedures of the trials and questions over the reliability of their findings. Throughout the trials, the court heard no witnesses for defense, and the verdict rested entirely on documents, newspaper clips, even hearsay and forgeries, and testimony never subjected to cross-examination. Hence the term kangaroo courts. Then there is the Malta Tribunal that I covered in episodes 26, 27, and 28. Briefly, some prominent Turks, 144 at its peak, accused of the persecution of the Armenians, were arrested and deported to Malta in 1919 by the British, purely on the basis of hearsay and horror stories fabricated by the Armenians themselves. None of the accused was arrested based on any evidence. There was no evidence, no reliable witness, no proof, no case. The trial ended in 1921 without ever starting due to lack of evidence, and all the Turks were set free. That should have been the end of all this. This proved that it was not genocide. After all, the British had the full use of the Ottoman archives for 5 years, and even assigned an Armenian to oversee them. Here are the 3 tribunals that give one perspective that the Ottoman intent was to mitigate a wartime threat to the Ottoman war effort, not murder its own people as claimed. See episodes 5, 8, 16, 17, and 18. T11, terminology. The terms used by the Armenian falsifiers and Turk haters, or the AFAT community for short, are all propagandistic, derogatory, slanderous, deceptive, unfair, unethical, racist, and dishonest. I will cover these terms and how Armenians cultivate hatred in education of their young in a future episodes. See episodes 2, 3, 4, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Trust lost, T12. How did the Ottoman Armenians go from Milleti Sadika, the loyal nation, to the Hain Millet, the traitorous nation, in 60 years from 1862 to 1922? I will cover this issue in more detail in a future episode. See episodes 1 through 5. T13, traps. There are many gaslighting traps in the official Armenian narrative. The rhetoric is generally based on hearsay, forgeries, and fabrications. Here is one. Princeton University's Professor Bernard Lewis was asked if his views had changed on whether the killing of 1 million Armenians amounts to genocide. He answered this gaslighting question in a very powerful way, as follows on April 14, 2002, covered by C-SPAN 2. I partially quote, What happened to the Armenians was the result of a massive Armenian armed rebellion against the Turks, which began even before war broke out and continued on a larger scale. Great numbers of Armenians, including members of the armed forces, deserted, crossed the frontier, and joined the Russian forces invading Turkey. Armenian rebels actually seized the city of Van and held it for a while, intending to hand it over to the invaders. There was guerrilla warfare all over Anatolia, unquote. See episodes 2, 3, 4, 11, 12, and 13. T14, truth bashing. Manipulation of stories and numbers and propagandizing events form the basis of the official Armenian propaganda. Here's a perfect example. A missionary well known for his research on Christianity, Lamza George M., penned the book titled The Secret of the Near East in 1923. On page 133, he wrote this insightful paragraph, I quote, "In some towns containing 10 Armenian houses and 30 Turkish houses, it was reported that 40,000 people were killed and about 10,000 women were taken to the harem and thousands of children left destitute and the city university destroyed and the bishop killed." It is a well-known fact that even in the last war, the native Christians, despite the Turkish cautions, armed themselves and fought on the side of the Allies. In these conflicts, they were not idle, but they were well supplied with artillery, machine guns, and inflicted heavy losses on their enemies, unquote. See episodes 2, 3, 4, 5, 35, 38, and 42. T15, tropes and trolls. The Armenian falsifiers and Turk haters use the internet effectively to defame and demonize all Turks and Azerbaijanis. Wikipedia, unfortunately, supports the Armenian misrepresentations so much that it even ignores the milestone verdicts of 2015 by the highest court in Europe. ECHR ruled that genocide is an opinion, not a fact, and that it cannot be compared to the Jewish Holocaust. ECHR added that rejecting the Armenian opinion is not hate speech, but mere free speech. See episodes 8, 11, 12, and 13. Alternatively, if you are a K-12 student or a concerned parent of one, see episodes 13 and 41. A college student or a concerned parent of one, see episodes 1 through 5, 8 through 19. And a postgrad student doing research or a wiki contributor, see all 52 episodes. A curious truth seeker attached to neither Armenians nor Turks, episodes 5, 10 to 32. A supporter of the official Armenian narrative, see episodes 1 through 5. So, let the facts speak for themselves and the chips fall where they may. 100+ years of deception, defamation, falsification, and bullying got us nowhere. What we really need going forward is more honest research, fair-minded analysis, impartial peer review, and civilized dialogue. Thank you for joining me. See you next week.